Welcome to John Martin Talks, where we battle ignorance and apathy daily. The growing ignorance of just how special this experiment we call the United States of America is, and the apathy that we can't or won't do anything and everything to save her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got some good stories for you today. The first one comes to you from CBS News. U.S. service members seen wearing MAGA-inspired patches at Trump's speech may have violated DOD rules, in other words, Department of Defense. U.S. service members attending a Memorial Day address by President Trump during his overseas trip to Japan were photographed wearing patches inspired by his campaign slogan, the MAGA slogan. And this may have violated the Pentagon's strict rules barring soldiers from showing political preferences. Well, if true, it's hard to blame them. I mean, obviously, President Trump is certainly coming off the 8 years of Obama, is a president who recognizes the sacrifices of the military service, who honors military service, and who is reticent to put them in harm's way, quite frankly. And so it's kind of hard to blame them if they're actually guilty of this. And it's a bit questionable whether they actually violated the rules. They certainly probably skirted them, as you will see as the story goes on. Navy spokesman Samuel Boyle said in a statement to CBS News, Navy leadership is currently reviewing this instance to ensure that the wearing of the patch does not violate DOD policy or regulations. You know, it's funny how you never heard about any of this kind of stuff during the Obama administration. And I have a twofold meaning or reason for bringing that up. One might be the obvious, that maybe the military didn't support military members, the rank and file, I should say, didn't support the President Obama the way they did, the way they do President Trump. That's merely speculation on my part. Clearly, the voting members of the military, those that voted in the 2016 election, overwhelmingly supported the president. That has been proven very conclusively. But the other reason I bring this up is because there were incidences during the Obama administration where you could say military members were showing their enthusiasm for the president. You may recall that last year, I think it was, President Trump visited some soldiers in the field, and he got a lot of picture-taking opportunities, people wearing MAGA hats and that kind of thing, and he was roundly criticized for politicizing the military. But at the same time, they failed to show, imagine this, the mainstream media, that when Obama did similar things, he literally was signing books and posters and taking selfies. I'm not necessarily complaining about that. I'm not saying that President Obama did anything wrong. I'm simply pointing out that when Trump does something that President Obama did, it's a problem. But when Obama did it, it's just for the commander-in-chief. So it's tempting to say there's a double standard, but I hadn't said this in a while, but if I say it, it bears repeating. There is no double standard for conservatives. Let me tell you that right off the bat. Now, listen to me when I say this, okay? Sometimes I say things and people go, whoa, but they need to listen a little bit deeper. There's no double standard, because that would imply literally there's one standard for conservatives and one for progressives. There is a standard for conservatives, clearly. And this is a great example of it. There is no standard for progressives. They can literally get away with anything. I guarantee you, if there were some patch that supported President Obama during his time, similar to what these guys wore, then you wouldn't even known it happened. It wouldn't have been a peep about it. And if there was anything about it, they would just say, oh, they're just showing exuberance for the commander-in-chief. So make no mistake, there is no double standard. There is only one standard, a standard for conservatives that you cannot deviate from or you get blasted, and zero standard, less than zero if that's possible, for progressives. I just want to make that clear. Moving on with the story, Billy Bob tells me to move on. In case you haven't tuned into psychic sidekick, Billy Bob Bass. He kind of keeps me straight here, John Martin Talks. He has a Twitter following, by the way. It's at Billy Bob Bass 1, and mine is at John Martin Talks. So you want to know how crazy I am? I'm a fish whisperer. I don't whisper too often. Back to the story. The airmen posing for the photo all donned matching patches showing what appears to be the president along with the text. I'll try to post this on my John Martin Talks Facebook site, this picture later on, maybe the article itself. If you want to see memes, articles that I post and I comment on, the only way you're going to see those is really to go to John Martin Talks Facebook page directly, like it, and please share it with others. There's some other sites. If you want everything that I write about, talk about, go to John Martin Talks Facebook page, like it, and share it directly. Of course, I appreciate all the people that are following the show, liking the show, sharing it from places like Citizens for Trump, Deplorable Resistance. I really greatly appreciate it, so thank you so much. But back to the article. So the airmen posing for the photo all donned matching patches showing what appears to be the president. Great again. Wire services photographers also captured images of the same military members. Now, we got to get these guys up to speed, because if you see the thing, it kind of shows what looks like a president, and then it has kind of what looks like MAGA and a red hat, but it says this. Because I think it's now keep air crew great, right? I think that would be the more modern version of it. Anyway, I'll post this article up later today so you can actually see what we're talking about. But I think it's much to do about nothing. The military support the president, and we kind of already knew that. All right, we're going to move on to a very, very serious story here, and it comes to you from Bloomberg, and I have probably a slightly, as you can imagine, they have, but this involves the so-called trade wars with China, and it's specifically about what they call rare earth elements, and we'll talk about that as the story goes on. China gears up to weaponizing rare earths in trade war. Bloomberg. Beijing is gearing up to use its dominance of rare earths to hit back in its deepening trade war with Washington. Now, this next paragraph shows you why we need to take a stand against China and why this is so important. I think this, it's rare earth. Maybe it's not really all that important. Believe me, this is a mega issue. Not a MAGA, although it's becoming one, but it is a mega issue for the safety and security, not only of our country, but really the world itself. A flurry of Chinese media reports on Wednesday, including an editorial in the flagship newspaper of the Communist Party. We forget sometimes that China is a communist, the leader of the communist world, I suppose, raised the prospect of Beijing cutting exports of the commodities that are critical in defense, energy, electronics, and automobile sectors. Some pretty important sectors, I think you would say. The world's biggest producer of these rare earth elements, China supplies about 80% of U.S. imports of rare earths. So we depend on China for 80% of this. And let me go back. This actually ties into defense, energy, electronics, and the automobile sectors. So 80% of these rare earth elements that go into all these major sectors, we depend on China for them. China supplies about 80% of the imports of U.S. imports to rare earth, which are used in a host of applications from smartphones to electric vehicles and wind turbines. So all kind of different things. Trump, let me just tell you this. President Trump, love him, hate him, whatever, he's at least taken a stand, because this should have been something we dealt with in the past. China should have never been allowed to capture literally the corner of the entire market on these things, considering how vital they are to so many elements of what we consider modern life. And I can tell you this, future presidents, now they may not say this, but future presidents will be glad that President Trump stood up to China. It's about time. And Donald Trump at the G20 meeting next month. So this could come to a head, all of this next month. It shows how China is weighing its options after the U.S. blacklisted, this is a very important story, not getting a whole lot of coverage, and I hope I say this right, it's almost sounds like Hawaii, but it's Huawei, I guess. Huawei Technologies Company. It's a Chinese communist-owned controlled country, or company, should say. Cutting off the supply of American components needs to make it smartphones and networking gear. So the U.S. under President Trump blacklisted this company. Now the reason, you may say, well, why? Because this company was putting chips into every device they were making, including potentially ballistic missile technology for the United States of America that had spyware on it. And we're not talking to things that you can just eliminate with some of that spyware technology. The real deal. They were gathering information on pretty much every element of our society, economy, defense, everything. The U.S. shouldn't underestimate China's ability to fight the trade war, the People's Daily said in an editorial Wednesday. Or ahead of us, I should say, that used some historically significant language in the weight of China's intent. So they used some language that they have used in the past, but only when they were trying to make a serious point. We'll expand upon a rare Chinese phrase that means don't say I didn't warn you. So they have a phrase that basically means don't say I didn't warn you, and they've used it in the past, very specific wording. And here's a couple of cases. The specific: China went to war with India, and those familiar with the Chinese diplomatic language know the weight of this phrase. The Global Times, a newspaper affiliated with the Communist Party, said in an article in April. It was also, by the way, used before the conflict broke out between China and Vietnam in 1979. So it's a very serious threat. They would not use this. One thing about the Chinese, they don't use words lightly. They have a long view of things, and they want to win not only this trade war, but they make no mistake, they want to dominate the world's economy. And there is no doubt about it. That's not my opinionated fact, although it is. It's just a plain fact. And I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Play in the news. China is in the process of controlling the seas. They are literally taking over ports around the world, including, by the way, in South and Central America. And the way they do this is they enter into deals with governments down there and around the world, actually, especially over in their region of the world. Are these governments default to them and don't make the rental payments or their payment agreements, and China basically sees them that way. And that is a big, big deal and something we should be taking on. But I would say about President Trump taking on China, and I think this story, this is really my, and I'm going to go more in depth in a minute, but I'll give you my conclusion right now. If not now, when? If not now, when? When should we take on China? After they control 100% of the rare earth minerals? After they control like 100% of the ports? When should we take them on? President Trump has decided that now is the time. And as I said, I think we will be eternally grateful for the president for standing up to China now. Because if not now, when? Rare earths aren't particularly rare. Cerium, the most abundant, is more common in the Earth's crust than copper. All other rare earth elements besides promethium can be found more widely than silver, gold, or platinum, according to U.S. Geological Survey. The rare earth thing is a bit misleading. Now, there's a couple of reasons why they call it rare earth, and there may be several others. One of them is, yeah, they're found all over the globe, but the concentrations that are like economically viable to mine are in very few places. In other words, they're spread out everywhere, but where it's concentrated is a little bit more rare, and China, by its geography, actually dominates that. There's a lot of it in Australia too, by the way, and we have some here in the United States, but China has cornered the economic market to the point that they can control the market of it and basically make it unprofitable for other companies to even venture into it, which is so they have a monopoly on it, which is another thing that needs to be broken up. So, okay, but let me just, when they were talking about that it's rare, it's not that rare, a thought came to me. Oil. Oil is not that rare either. Oil is literally found all over the planet, right? But we know any country, let alone a group of countries like OPEC, are able to manipulate the market. Even though the oil itself is everywhere, being able to manipulate the market makes it literally rare in a sense. Because think about this. I'll give you a quick example. The oil sands in Canada. One of the reasons why they backed down a little bit on oil sands in Canada is because it's expensive to get out. The reserves there, some people say, are the biggest in the world. And we have some here in the United States as well. But Saudi Arabia, leader of OPEC, is able to flood the market with oil whenever they really want to, and it drives down the prices. And once the price per barrel gets below a certain level, it doesn't become economically feasible to do something like the oil sands. So keep that in mind. The same thing applies to this rare earth. And China has been manipulating the market, and they have even a bigger control over this market than OPEC ever has over oil. Back to the article. However concentrated and economic deposits are scarce and production is dominated by a handful of countries, China is the biggest by far, accounting for almost 70% of global production and 40% of the world's reserves, according to the USGS data. Now, that's an interesting combination. They control 70% of the production and 40% of the world's reserves. That shows you just how strong their position is. And there may be very little we can do about it in the short run. In the long run, we can produce our own, but it's going to be costly if we do. So hopefully we can resolve all this. But one thing about it, we need to understand that we have got to take this on. President Trump is willing to take this on, and thank God. My big question is, why have past administrations, both Republican and Democrats, not seen the danger of it? Clearly they saw it. They chose to ignore it because it's not something like, even now, most people are probably listening to this show and going on to something else because it's not a popular topic. It's not a sexy topic. It's not, impeach 45 topic. But I'm telling you, for the safety and security of the United States of America, it may be one of the most, if not the most important topic. And thank God President Trump has the cojones, the audacity, the willingness, the courage to take this on. And we need to thank him for that. And people, even if you hate Donald Trump, you should admire him for his willingness to put politics aside and stand up for America. This is probably not something that's going to sway hearts and minds, but it is important. Back to the story. In December 2017, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to reduce the country's dependence on external sources of critical minerals, including rare earths, which was aimed at reducing U.S. vulnerability to supply disruptions. Now, so President Trump saw this and did an executive order. Not all executive orders are the same, that's for sure. Isn't it interesting? And this is kind of a side note, but to me it's... President Trump, if you go back and look at his executive orders, all of his executive orders for the most part are looking at doing a couple of things. Either defending the United States of America, which this is, or protecting and enhancing the economy of the United States of America. And quite often there is an overlap of that. Go back and look at the things that President Obama did. I can think of one in particular where he said, I'm not the emperor, I'm not the king, but oh, by the way, I'll give an executive order and change our immigration laws. That wasn't designed to protect and defend the United States of America. You say it was the humanitarian thing to do for the dreamers and that kind of thing. And there's certainly an argument to be made for that. I don't particularly agree with it, but I could see how you could make an argument. But you can't really argue that it was for the States of America or to improve the economy, because it quite frankly and without a doubt was not. But President Trump, by and large, his executive orders, and I'm not a big fan in general of executive orders, but I will defend his, and we'll keep you updated on this. But in a sense, I'll give you my conclusion again. Thank God that President Trump is willing to take on tough issues. This is one of them. The overall trade deficit and war with China is one of them. North Korea is certainly one. Iran is becoming a bigger one daily. Our president has the knowledge and really, quite frankly, the cojones, if you don't mind me saying that, to actually stand for America. And we all should support that. He is our president, and he's still your president, you snowflakes out there. You know, get over it, but I know you won't. All right, we're going to move on to another story that I find extremely interesting and kind of defines that maybe, just maybe, the story behind like Planned Parenthood isn't all they claim to be. This is coming once again from CBS News, and as I've said before, but I'll say it again, I watch certain shows, I read certain publications as a public service, so you don't have to, and CBS News is one of those. Missouri's last abortion clinic says it may lose its license this week. St. Louis, Missouri, the last remaining abortion clinic in Missouri says it expects to be shut down this week, effectively ending legal abortion in the state. Now you'd say, oh, well, the state's going around shutting down abortion clinics. There's actually a bit more to the story than might first be revealed by the headline, and we will explain it in just a moment. In a statement Tuesday, Planned Parenthood said Missouri's health department is refusing to renew its annual license to provide abortion in the state. If the license is not renewed by May 31st, which I believe is Friday, Missouri would become the first state without a functioning abortion clinic since 1973 when Roe versus Wade was decided. Now, if true, you could say this is tragic. You could say it's a blessing. You could say it's something to celebrate. You could say it's something to protest. I mean, you could, depending on which side of the issue, it is a big issue. There is no doubt about it. But there's still more. Hang on. There is more to this than meets the eye. Planned Parenthood filed a lawsuit requesting a restraining order against the state of Missouri, hoping to restore the license and avoid service, I like how they say, service disruption. A circuit court judge will hear arguments today, actually. Now think about this. I've said this many, many times, but Democrats, that's why they fought so hard against Kavanaugh, pounding on the Supreme Court door, and all that melting at the Supreme Court, because they realized that a lot of their legislative agenda can never be passed by the American public. It can only be done at the court level. And this is one of them. The whole thing about Kavanaugh, and we'll move on, but I just want to make this point. The whole protest against Kavanaugh had nothing to do with sexual stuff in his high school days or drinking. It was all about Roe versus Wade. That was it, plain and simple. That was the whole reason behind the craziness that we saw in Washington. It had nothing to do with sex and drinking. It had to do with sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Planned Parenthood would still be able to provide this is a very critical point. Planned Parenthood would still be able to provide non-abortion health services for women in Missouri. Now, hasn't Planned Parenthood always said that abortion, these are my words, is a small part of what they do? It's just something, this is just something we do. Our main thing is taking care of women's health, right? I mean, that's what they keep the mantra. I don't care which side of the issue you're on. If you're honest with yourself, Planned Parenthood's main thing is they say, their public persona is that abortion is just one of many services we do, and our main focus is on women's health. Well, how come they're going to shut down then if abortion is such just one thing we do? Then if it's about women's health, why don't they keep going? Because abortion is where they make their money, and make no mistake about it, Planned Parenthood's main mission is abortion. Whether you're pro-life, and whatever you want to call it, pro-choice, whatever, make no mistake, this is just a fact. Planned Parenthood's main mission is abortion. There really is no argument against that. Planned Parenthood, and this article proves it even more. Planned Parenthood said it plans to sue the state in order to try to keep serving Missouri women. They could keep serving Missouri women no matter what. And as you will see as we move on, the state is not preventing them from doing abortions. Are they putting some additional restrictions on it? Yes. But actually preventing them? No. But Planned Parenthood is making it sound that way, making a so that they can continue to do abortions. That's really what it's all about. Dr. Lena Wynn, President and CEO of Planned Parenthood Federation of America, in other words, the head honcho, said this is not a drug. This is a real public health crisis. And my question there is, how? How? And once again, I don't really care which side of the issue in this case you're on. How is abortion, or the ability to perform abortion in general, a health care crisis? I mean, yeah, sure, there are some things that might endanger a woman's health with a pregnancy. There's no question about that. But by and large, pregnancy is not the death sentence that once often was for women. Women died in childbirth quite frequently before. So I'm not taking away from pregnancy potentially being a health care issue to the mother as far as her ability to literally survive. I'm not saying that. It has been improved upon tremendously, but eliminated, no. But it's not a public health care crisis per se. It is a crisis for people who support, for sure. And is abortion under so-called, as they later on say here, attack? Well, yeah, it probably. There are people who feel like now is the time to eliminate abortion. But most Americans really want to bring some sense to this thing. If it were truly like the Clintons tried to promote, safe, legal, and rare, I don't think we would be even having this discussion. But because the left never gives up on pushing things to the extreme, and that now we're literally have laws that say on the books, like in New York and tried to be in Virginia, that you can abort a baby after it's born. I mean, that is pushing it to the extreme, and the American people just aren't with that. And so, but Planned Parenthood, you know, it's got to be 100% or no way. So public health care crisis, I still don't understand how it's quite that way. But I could be wrong. I'm not claiming to be an expert on this, but I have an opinion and I'm expressing it. And I think it's the opinion of many, many Americans. In fact, I know that it is. So we've given you the story leading up to this point, and now, as they say, here's the rest of the story. On May 20th, the Missouri Department of Health and Senior Services notified Planned Parenthood of 3 issues that could impact license renewal. And these are very interesting. On May 22nd, Planned Parenthood said it would address 2 of them, 2 of the 3. Adjusting who at the clinic provided state-mandated counseling. So one of the problems is that the state, according to Planned Parenthood, as far as the problem, is mandating that any women that come in for an abortion get some counseling. And I'm sure some of this talks about, have you thought about adoption and alternatives to abortion? I personally don't see anything wrong with that, no matter which side of the issue you're on. Because one thing about it, an abortion is final. You can't reverse it, right? So when you make a decision to the magnitude of abortion, you probably should weigh it. I'm not saying women don't weigh it. I can tell you for a fact, and I've said this before, if you're just tuning in the show, you may not know this, but I worked at a drug treatment center for 15 years. And I had many, many clients, women, of course, and men, of course, part of it in a sense, at least in some sense. But women, I've dealt with many, many women who have had abortion. And I have yet to meet one, and I'm sure they're out there, but I have personally yet to meet one that celebrated it, that said, oh my God, it's the greatest thing I've ever done. It is a very emotional experience for women, and I have come as close to it as you can, still being a man. I'll never experience it like a woman does, so I will admit that right up front. But I've never met a woman, and some of them, I wouldn't say they all necessarily regretted it, but it was emotionally traumatic experience for them. So the idea of having a bit of counseling before this, I personally don't see anything wrong with it. So Planned Parenthood doesn't want any kind of counseling. So they've been fighting that. And then the next thing of the second of the 3 is an additional pelvic exam for abortion patients. Because what they're basically saying in this law in Missouri is that all women having an abortion, whether it's a physical abortion, I mean it is a medical procedure, There's basically two types of way they do a medical procedure, and there are variations on that. And then there's a pill, like the day after pill or something, that can literally trigger an abortion. And so the state is saying any type of abortion, you must have a pelvic exam. And Planned Parenthood is fighting that. So the issue, here's the thing, the issue is not to abort abortions, but how are they administered? So Missouri is not saying you cannot have an abortion. They are actually restricting it. I will absolutely agree with that. They are restricting it. Whether that's good or bad, you could debate it, but they're actually saying that you should have counseling and you should have out of its control. Planned Parenthood said that. According to Planned Parenthood, the health department said it was investigating deficient practices, in other words, some malfeasance, and needed to interview 7 physicians who provide care at the clinic. Planned Parenthood said it could offer interviews only to 2 who are its employees. That are performing abortions are hired, actually, employees of Planned Parenthood. The other 5 physicians working at the facility are residents in training and not employed by Planned Parenthood. In other words, they're not actually licensed physicians yet. They're still going through the process. I'm not saying they're not qualified people. I know by the time you get in kind of residency, you basically are a doctor, but they're not legally doctors yet. A spokesman for the clinic said via email on Tuesday, that's where they responded, the state has indicated that the result of these interviews could be a broad review in addition to criminal proceedings. I don't know exactly what happened. The spokesman said, the medical residents declined to be interviewed for the state's investigation. I'm not sure about the doctors that actually work for Planned Parenthood. Now we know, talk about criminal activities. I'm not accusing Planned Parenthood of this. I'm not accusing them from doing this anywhere, let alone in Missouri. I don't know. But we do know that there have been criminal activities by abortion doctors. Remember the movie, if you haven't seen it, Gosnell, and what happened, I believe it was in Philadelphia. You need to check that out. It was no doubt criminal what they were doing. And if you want to hear more about that, go check out my podcast. I did an interview with Alfonso Rachel, who was one of the stars of that movie. And I replayed it not too long ago. But you can go to my John Martin Talks Facebook site, scroll through, and you will find my interview with Alfonso Rachel. It's also, by the way, on my YouTube channel. You can check that out as well. But check it out. It's well worth seeing. Dr. Colin McNichols, a Planned Parenthood physician in St. Louis, said, we are 100% committed to the best care that we can provide for patients. So certainly, if there's an issue with the care, we're providing what we want to know about it. So there's an issue. So they're saying that if there's some issue they want to know about, so what is the big deal? Just comply with it. These residences, they don't want these resident doctors, soon-to-be doctors, they don't want to talk about what they did? Shouldn't they be proud of what they did? But let me get this correct. Dr. Nichols went on to say, we want to be able to address that, but we can't do that when we are being attacked. They're being attacked. Imagine that. So the 3 things they wanted to do is to, 1, provide counseling. It doesn't seem like much of an attack. Give a pelvic exam. Seems like standard practice if you're talking about women's health. I'm not a doctor, don't play one on TV. But I would think that central to a women's health would be the health of their pelvic. But that's just me. And the other is what's really going on there. What do you got to hide? I don't know. But here I got a couple of radical ideas, because here at John Martin Talks, if you've listened to us anytime at all, you'll know that we're always just trying to help, looking for solutions. Here's some radical ideas I have. Why not continue care for women until the case is resolved? So why don't you just, if you got to resolve this case, you got some court challenges, why don't you, if it's all about women's health issues and abortion is just one of the things you do, why don't you stand up for the women of Missouri and just give them the great care that you talk about, and they can do abortions later? And I understand that abortion can't be put off but so long. I guess it can be put off to the point that the child's actually born. But if you really truly care about women's health issues, why don't continue to do the services you can outside of abortion? I think I know why. Progressive, let me think about this, man. Progressives, think about this. This is the state government passed in Alabama and various other states in the heartbeat bill. So I feel, as someone who believes in like limited government, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. What you're saying is, you progressives out there are realizing that you're a victim of government overreach. So why don't you, maybe you should consider forming your own Tea Party, because that's what the Tea Party essentially was formed by, government overreach. So maybe we got a lot more in common than you think. We may not agree on the abortion issue, but we can certainly agree that government overreaches all the time. So it's interesting to me for these progressives to be fighting government overreach. Just thought I'd point that out. Back to the story. Clinics that can't comply with the regulations may be forced to shut their doors. I guess they've already shuttered some. Something that happened to several clinics in Missouri when the state began requiring pelvic exams for medical abortions. That's where the doctor physically performs an abortion, and a method administered by pill, according to McNichols. Although Planned Parenthood in this year's negotiation with the states agreed to administer an extra pelvic exam for surgical abortions, the group wouldn't budge on pill administrated ones. Well, let me just ask you, shouldn't pelvic, and I say I don't play a doctor on TV nor in real life, shouldn't pelvic exams be a standard practice for women's health? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. So people, please, my audience, I have a very knowledgeable audience. If I'm wrong on this, that pelvic exams shouldn't be central to women's health, please let me know where I'm wrong, because it just seems logical to me, but I could be wrong. McNichols went on to say, when I say an unnecessary pelvic exam, what I mean is that the state is forcing me, you gotta love this, forcing me to put my fingers in somebody's vagina, hope you wear a glove, right, when it's totally medically irrelevant. Now, I gotta admit, I'm confused by this. How is examining a woman's pelvic region, if you're a medical person and you're concerned about women's health, how is that some kind of violation? I'm just confused on it. I admit, I don't know. I admit when I don't know. That is really bordering, she goes on to say, that is really bordering on harassment. So to actually examine a woman's pelvis in a place for women's health issues is harassment. She says, I'm really proud of our clinicians for taking a stand and saying, we just won't do that to patients. So how many patients are like, I'm trying to get this picture. So a woman goes in for an abortion, whether it's a physical one where the doctor actually performs a procedure, and they're really worried about a physical examination at this time. So I'm more confused than ever, man. So please help me. Help me get straightened out. In 2008, this is according to CBS News. I got to point that out. In 2008, Missouri had 5 abortion clinics. Admits what they really are. Is CBS actually admitting, probably by mistake, that that's what these women's health centers really are? They're just really abortion clinics. And oh, by the way, we offer women's health services on the side. I think that's probably. Dr. Wynn, in an email to CBS News, said, this is a chilling warning for all of us that we are in a public health crisis. Again, I say how? How is it a public health crisis? Health crisis in general. I don't get that. And I don't get that really regardless of which side of the issue. I know there are extreme cases, but they're very rare when a woman's actual health is at risk. And I don't think really too many people argue against that. Certainly issue. But how is it a health crisis? And if it is a health crisis, why are you shutting down the clinics if it's about women's health? I'm more confused than ever. She goes on to say, today it's Missouri of America. And that's what they're fighting, right? That's what they're fighting. So let me just ask you this in kind of conclusion. What is the real mission of Planned Parenthood? Because I have to say, I'm pretty confused. I saw that movie, Unplanned. And I actually interviewed Abby Johnson. That's another one of my podcasts you should go back and check out. But I saw that movie Unplanned. It was very moving to me. It was, if you haven't seen it, you ought to check it out. it was clear in the movie, and I'm not saying the movie is completely factual. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that there wasn't Hollywood license. I don't know. But it was clear in the movie that Planned Parenthood's mission was abortion. Plain and simple. That is how they make their money. That is how they stay alive. And whether or not that's true, I don't know. I'm willing to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But when I read articles like this and hear their argument, then they take away that doubt, if there ever was any, that their real mission is abortion. And oh, by the way, it's, they're trying. They are a for-profit organization. They may be a non-profit, so to speak. He's a communist. Well, they shouldn't have a problem with that. They pretty much all are. But he is a thorn. Imagine. Democrats worry that Sanders won't be a team player if he loses, and that he and his supporters will be saying here, oh, Bernie might be a problem if the wrong old white dude wins. I think I got a solution for that, and I'll reveal it later. One do everything in his power to elevate himself by pushing others down, said one aide to a Democratic senior. A senior anonymous person, Democratic senator, said concerns about Sanders dividing the party next year are widely held, even though everyone in the Senate Democratic Conference is holding their fear of making things even worse. So the Democrats are afraid, and they won't say it. They're so afraid they won't put the name out there. They don't want to be known, anonymous. You know, maybe they should take a lesson for the never Trumper rhinos. They're fearless, right? We got King Swamp Rat, Mitt Romney, saying all kind of things. He's not afraid, is he? By the way, you citizens of Utah, do your country a service. Recall Romney the Swamp Rat now, please. I beg of you, great citizens of Utah. And then we got that dude in Michigan. I wasn't even going to talk about him. I will say whose name shall, I don't want to give him any credit, whose name shall not be mentioned. He is saying all kind of things about the president. Rhinos, the rat rhinos, they don't care. They'll throw stuff out right on the record against Trump. So why don't you Democrats grow a pair and do it the same? Maybe they're afraid they'll get snipped off if they do. But anyway, I'll move on. The aide said, the anonymous aide, said that when it comes to Sanders, there is a concern among Biden supporters that this guy is going to play spoiler again. Spoiler again. And this is where, you know, I've said this before, but if I say it, it bears repeating. The progressives want you to believe in fantasy. They want you to believe in the fantasy of the Russia project and Russia investigation, that Donald Trump spent his whole life becoming a multi-billionaire just so he could be a Manchurian candidate and the pocket puppet of Vladimir Putin. I mean, they just want you to believe in fantasy. The whole Mueller thing was a fantasy from the start, man, or a nightmare, I guess, depending on how you look at it. But they want you to believe in this case when they say that Bernie was a spoiler alert, that there's a fantasy that if it weren't for old Bernie, if he'd have just been more of a team player, maybe got out of the race sooner, or heaven forbid, not run at all, that the Hildebeest would have won. Hillary would be president right now if it weren't for Bernie. They don't, I mean, she's president of California, I'll give you that. But they don't look at that she was a lousy candidate that people knew. It's not like they didn't know who Hillary Clinton was. And she's a lousy candidate who didn't even campaign in places like Wisconsin, who ran a lousy, lackluster campaign, was wrong on all the major issues, and got beat by President Trump. That is all because Bernie didn't do the right thing. I mean, that's the fantasy, man. I hope they keep up that fantasy, because then they'll get the hat handed to them. Back to the article. The worries follow a bitter 2016 primary fight between Sanders and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. I'm sorry. I wish it were bitter. I don't remember. I remember Bernie caving to Hillary on the, I hate to break it to you snowflakes out there, but Bernie didn't run any kind of bitter. You might have felt bitter about it, but your guy, he wasn't bitter. In fact, I'm tired of your emails and hearing about it. He defended Hillary on the debate stage. He didn't take Hillary on straight on. So you snowflakes, you might have had a bitter experience. But Bernie, he came out smelling like a rose, man. He got millions of dollars, sold a book, even a couple of them, I think. But so I don't know about this bitter. It said about Hillary Clinton, who won the nomination and was then defeated by President Trump in the Electoral College. So it's all there. You go right back to the Electoral College. Hillary would have won if it hadn't been for old Bernie and that old archaic thing called the U.S. Constitution that has the Electoral College in it. Hillary would be the president right now. Well, I've posted this before, and maybe I'll post it again on my Facebook site. Go to John Martin Talks Facebook, like it, share it with others. Have you ever seen, you want to see just how big President Trump's actual victory was when it comes to the whole country? Look at the map of the counties from the 2016, the county map of the United States of America. It's virtually all red. I mean, even in California, it's pretty much red. Even in New York, it's pretty much red. Only the big population centers that want us to be like Hunger Games believe that. Only there did Hillary actually win big. But if you go by a county map, if you go by the geography of the United States of America, it was way in the President, and I want you to see that. But we always tell you the unvarnished truth here at John Martin Talks. Just scrub away all that old nasty stuff and get to that hardwood truth, baby. If you want the hardwood truth, you got to shows today. And thank you. So, for their part, Sanders supporters are suspicious of Democratic establishment. They think rigged the game against their candidate in 2016. You think? But what? Let me just ask you this. What did Bernie do when he knew that it was rigged? He played with Hillary. He went and campaigned for her. He bought a couple of houses and all that stuff. He went right back to the Senate. I mean, Bernie played along. He left you guys feeling the burn. And I don't put this lightly because I'm Martin Soul in the campaign. Work your tail off. I may not agree with your issues, but I admire your work ethic. For instance, I give you Ocasio-Cortez. I think she's a dingbat, but I give her credit for busting her behind and literally wearing the soles of her shoes off. Someone who's campaigned for many people, including for myself, I know about that. So you people that were feeling the burn and got hosed, my heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to by the way, and I hate to even mention this because it always pisses me off, you people that supported Hillary and were left high and dry when she didn't have her own supporters on the night of the election. My God, a woman. So here's the solution for those of them fearing the burn. And whether or not feeling the burn, but those two, but fearing the burn. What you need to do, Democrats, I'm trying to help the old party. You need to have multiple primaries. And I'm not just talking about the primaries all over the various states. I mean multiple primaries among the candidates. First of all, in no particular order, but since we're talking about old white dudes here, we could have the old white dudes deal. And you could have Bernie and Biden face off, and the winner comes out. So you got one at the end, you got one old white dude candidate. I don't know about Comrade de Blasio, put him in the mutt candidate at the very end. I don't know. But you got the two old white. Then we need a young dude, white dude primary. You could have old Paco, he's Billy Bartez, Beto. I get it all. And I'm bad with these names. Paco, Beto, Buttigieg, Buttigieg. Anyway, you could have a young white dudes between like Buttigieg and Paco. You could have them, and they could come out. Then of course you got to have a white women race. You got, I can't even keep up with them. Kohlbacher, and I don't know, is that chick from Hawaii still running? And then Gillibrand. Gillibrand, man, I don't know. Could have her run, and they could have the white women thing. And then, of course, you got to have a people of color. That throws in everybody, the people of color. And last and all, you got a separate category for one and only Elizabeth Warren. She gets a pass because we don't know. She's Indian. She's proven by her own paperwork that she's the whitest woman that ever lived, all that kind of stuff. So I'm just going to give Elizabeth Warren a pass. So you got the old white dude with Biden or Bernie, young white dude, Paco, Buttigieg, people of color, the women's, and then all of them face off in the primary moving forward. Narrow it down to, half a dozen or so. There you go. I'm always trying to help. Well, anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the show today as much as I've enjoyed bringing it to you. Please like and share it far and wide, whether you're being on Citizens for Trump, the other sites that we're on. Thank you so much. But above all else, as I say, from my family, Billy Bob Bass, my heart to yours, have a blessed day.